Good boy. Hey, I've owned this Tesla Model Y for about 6 months. I bought it new and it's a Model Y long range. So I picked it up towards the end of January on the day that I put in my order on the day that it dropped by $12,000 and it was ready for pickup in less than half a week. So a pretty quick turnaround, and since I've driven it over 15,000 miles, which is more than the average new car owner, and I've been living out of it, so actually sleeping out of the back of it in a lot of different places. So to say the least, I've got to know it pretty well. So my goal today with this video is to answer some common questions, and if you're considering buying a Tesla, hopefully it'll be useful insight. One of the most common questions that I get from people while I'm traveling around is, what's the charging situation like? Is it hard to find chargers? Is it expensive? So easy answer, and I'll often show people, I'll just let them hop in and play around on the screen. There's a really nice base screen that comes with the car, and on the top right on the map, you can select and see all the superchargers. And as you'll see, they're all over in the US along all the major roadways. So I have not had any issues charging, and I've just finished a big East Coast trip. I was out in Maryland, went down to Florida, worked my way back to, I'm in South Dakota now, before doing a big West Coast trip coming up pretty quick. But there has been no issues finding charging. And what's nice too is when you put in a destination, you can see it'll map out a route for you, and it will suggest what supercharger stations you want to go to along the way. It'll show you your next destination and roughly what your battery percentage will be going down to. This has been fairly accurate, but still I generally play it safe. I'll charge up a little extra at certain places, or if I know I have a longer stretch before getting to a charger, yeah, I'll just give it a little extra charge time, because based on weather, if it's colder, you might use a little more energy. But yep, no issues with charging. And because I can be a little more leisurely on my adventure, I'm taking time off work to travel and explore. I'll find free chargers at libraries, different towns, and that's been great. I'll just post up and I'll work on stuff at a library for a while. When I bought the car, I don't remember the exact cost, but I'll put it up right here. I'm not going to give a breakdown of that, but that doesn't include sales tax, other registration and fees. I did a video on that a while ago, so I'll link to that I'll link to that in the comments or the description. Uh, but yeah, ongoing costs of the full 15,000 miles, I've spent maybe close to $5. The only maintenance that I've had to do on this car, Archie is getting tired. The only maintenance that I've had to do on this car was put in new windshield wiper fluid. Really easy, really cheap. Um, and charging, of course, I'll get to that in a moment, the costs. But the other maintenance that I'm probably going to be looking at going forward, they recommend at roughly 20,000 miles to get new tires. So far, the treads don't look too bad on the tires, and I haven't done a rotation either. Uh, Tesla, I think, officially says it's 6,000 to 7,000 miles, which I'm well over. That's when you want to do a tire rotation. But doing a lot of research online, most people don't get that done, and it really depends on if there's uneven wear on the tires. So I've been good there. But when I do replace them here at roughly 20,000 miles, I'm expecting that to cost anywhere from $800 to $1,000 for the 4 tires. And the reason Tesla tires are replaced a little sooner than gas cars, EVs are heavier. The battery is pretty heavy in the car, so it leads to a little more wear and tear. Now on the charging side, because I've been able to find free chargers, I really haven't spent that much. But on longer travel days, I might do up to 12 hours, sometimes even 12 plus hours driving and charging and little stops along the way. Those I'll just go to superchargers because they are faster. The supercharger, probably the most I've spent for close to a full fill up was maybe $23. But you'll see on the screen, you can click into each supercharger and it'll give you what the price is per kilowatt hour. And different states have different rules and regulations around the energy and the energy cost. So some places, usually in cities is where I find it, you can, it'll give you a different rate based on the time of day or peak load or energy demand cycling. So that has been useful. You can travel very, very cheap. And on the wear and tear side, I of course don't have to get oil changes, saving a little money there. But also one thing I had to replace in my old Honda was the brake pads. But with Teslas, I should probably never have to replace the brake pad due to the regenerative braking. When I when I lift my foot off the accelerator pedal, it automatically slows down or comes to a stop for me. I rarely have to use the brake pedal. That's just for abrupt stops when I'm going quickly. And due to the lack of that wear and tear, I don't know, I might never have to replace the brake pad or have any caliper issues. So that's been great so far. Another question that comes up with EVs is waiting for charging. I haven't had to wait for charging at any supercharger station that I've been at. There's maybe one or two close calls where I was one of the last people to show up to an empty stall, and another person comes in and had to wait a little while, but no issues so far. And I've been in very busy areas with more Teslas around South Dakota. They're not too common yet. The closest showroom where I picked it up was down in Denver, Colorado. But traveling through the East Coast, down into Texas, Teslas were everywhere. And even at those stations, I didn't have to wait at all. But now going to the West Coast, we'll see. One of the great benefits is you no longer have to go to a gas station. You can just plug in at home at a standard wall outlet. If you're doing a pretty average commute, not a huge commute, that's more than enough power out of a standard wall outlet. Another thing to consider is the battery replacement. Over time, batteries will degrade as they go through multiple charge cycles. And some of the earlier Teslas have been on the road for 10 years. And from what we've seen, the batteries might end up being roughly 90, maybe at the lower end, down to 80% of what their initial capacity was. But my thought process there is these cars are getting so cost effective and so common, and we're only going to see more of them on the road, that already companies like GM, Ford, Tesla, of course, and many others are pumping billions and billions and billions of dollars into improving the batteries, and the cost should come down quite quickly. Over the course of 10 years, when maybe I'd want a replacement, it will probably be a fraction of the cost and a vastly improved battery. Maybe 500, 600, 700 mile battery might be pretty standard then. Because as we see, progress tends to disappoint in the short run and surprise in the longer run. 10 years for technology, it's kind of hard to figure out the exponential curve and what will happen. So should you end up buying a Tesla? Financially, most people should probably buy old used gas cars. That's the better move. Financially, my background, finance, accounting, wealth management, CFA exams, all that. But I mean, since I've been living out of this, it's been a little easier to justify. I haven't been doing traditional rent payments, and maintenance cost going forward has been pretty low. It's worked out really well. But if you have any specific questions or topics that you want a little more detail on, feel free to comment down below. And if you found anything useful here, I'd really appreciate it if you just tap the like button as well as subscribe, because that helps me as a small YouTube creator, and it really helps motivate me to keep on sharing what I learn. So I hope to see you down the road.